let the world know about carbon offsets and their data integrity around them. If you're looking at it a bit more holistically, you can look at offsets as a tool to channel funding into regions that are facing environmental degradation or climate vulnerability.
Joining us today is a guest from PowerSolve Technologies, Alexa Kneale. They are currently working on device-based carbon projects such as cook stoves, water filters, and full efficient lighting. They are also designing a new solution for holistic land management and regenerative grazing projects.
The next step for us really is to get on the digital MRV pilot program so that your project developers don't even have to take their information out the system.
Welcome to Survey and Beyond, the data collection podcast by Survey CTO. We share expert insights and practical tips on data collection and analysis, discuss innovative methods and tools to enhance data quality and security, and demystify complex data concepts to help people collecting data all around the world. I'm your host, Marta Costa. Joining us today is a guest from PowerSolve Technologies, Alexa Kneale, Business Development Manager. PowerSolve is a Mauritian-based company with a small international team. They are currently working on device-based carbon projects such as cook stoves, water filters, and full efficient lighting. They are also designing a new solution for holistic land management and regenerative grazing projects. PowerSolve systems are crucial for project developers to ensure that the carbon credits generated by their projects are auditable and that the project outcomes are verified. So today, Alexa and I will be diving into the carbon offset industry, why high quality and transparent data is essential in this space, and how PowerSolve is increasing trust in carbon offsets through traceability. So I would like to start us off today with some context and background around carbon offsets. I have a very basic understanding of what that is, and I'm pretty sure our listeners do too. I'm curious, how would you describe what carbon offsets are and what they are trying to achieve?
Sure, that's a great question to start with. It can all sound a little bit confusing sometimes with all of the terminology and industry jargon. But scientifically speaking, carbon offsets are quantified greenhouse gas emissions that have been reduced or removed from the atmosphere to counterbalance emissions elsewhere. If you're looking at it a bit more holistically, you can look at offsets as a tool to channel funding into regions that are facing environmental degradation or climate vulnerability. So whilst an offset is a verified ton of CO2 or equivalent greenhouse gas, it's also a socio-environmental investment into resilience and regeneration for ecosystems.
Okay, I think this is already very helpful to understand the basics. And you mentioned the jargon or the specific terminology of the industry at the beginning of your answer. So maybe could you share some key terms that would be helpful for our conversation today?
Yeah, sure. One that you'll hear a lot is ERs or VERs. ERs are emission reductions. So this is like the basic metric that is used to measure offsets and what becomes carbon credits. And a VER is a verified emissions reduction. So that's probably the most common one. Baseline might be another thing you hear a lot. That's quite important for offset projects. A baseline is the baseline amount of emissions before the project is implemented. So whatever is happening without intervention from the project, that is your baseline. And that is very important in working out the amount of emissions that you are reducing or removing from your baseline. That's your starting point. Another one you'll hear is MRV. This is very closely related to us. monitoring, reporting, and verification. And these are processes and protocols, and in our case, the tools and software that ensure the project is real and measurable. And then the last one I'm going to mention, just because I think we'll bring it up later in our conversation today, is API, because I think a lot of people are unsure on what this is. And so API is a way to integrate systems and automate data flows between software. So, for example, we use Survey CTO's API to pull field data and ensure seamless flow into our system.
Perfect. And I'm also aware that there is an important distinction between voluntary offset market and the compliance offset market. Could you briefly explain to us that difference?
Yeah. So we work in both industries, but they are quite different. So the compliance markets are built around legislation, where regions have either implemented carbon tax or national cap and trade systems. And this sort of forces entities to try and lower their emissions. And in certain cases where they are very hard to abate emissions, or just you're allowed to purchase offsets to sort of compensate for your emissions. So instead of paying tax on the emissions that you cannot reduce, a portion of those you can purchase offsets instead. And then that is effectively lowering your emissions without you having to actually lower them. This is why some people have an issue with offsets and say that they are enabling polluters to continue. But I think that's an argument we don't have to get into today. But that is then where voluntary offsets will come in. Those are driven entirely by market demand. A company, let's say, wants to sell themselves as being environmentally friendly, or they're facing a lot of consumer pressure to be more sustainable, and they want to reduce their carbon footprint. A way of doing that would be to invest in offsets, and then they are counterbalancing their emissions voluntarily.
So I think now have a good picture of the basics of the industry, and I would really love to talk about PowerSolve Technologies, which is the company you work for. You already mentioned that you work both in the voluntary offset market and the compliance offset market, but can you explain a little bit more about what you do and what is the role of PowerSolve in this industry?
Yeah, sure. So the industry is still evolving, and we're sort of filling an emerging niche. We work with clients and partners like yourselves, but primarily with carbon project developers, or project developers, we call them. And they are the people who are designing and implementing these carbon offset projects. And we basically support them with the digital infrastructure and the technical skills to build and develop systems to help them with their reporting and monitoring and getting their projects verified. Sometimes we refer to ourselves as the digital plumbers of the world. We ensure there's no leaks or blockages, making sure all the pipes connect correctly. But a lot of what we do is on the software development side, and then also consulting on systems and process improvements between what's going on in the field and what's going on behind the scenes in the carbon teams, making sure that there's transparency across all those different levels, and then that's carried through to the auditors and investors. This is where our role is.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and striking the balance between being mission driven and successful as a company is something that resonates a lot with us at Survey CTO. And I know that another value that connects Survey CTO with you is this idea of, is this value of caring so much about data quality and data transparency. Could you share a bit more about why is this so important to you and to carbon offsets in general?
Yeah, of course. It's a very important topic. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to carbon and sort of working in the environment and sustainability sectors, you tend to think of it sort of as nonprofit work. And although I think there are a lot of people in this industry who really are sort of driven by wanting to have impact and going above and beyond just merely working for a corporate just to make money, at the end of the day, these projects and this industry, it is for profit. This is not just someone donating funds to just go somewhere and do something and it's just been written off as a donation. These projects are run like the same way as any project would be, where you need to have proof of what you've done. Your investors want to see results, and your verification agencies need to see that what you have done is real and is having an impact and that your claims are accurate. And so I'm sure you have heard, as many other people have probably heard, very negative things about carbon offsets. They've dominated the headlines for a while now with sort of negative stories of either inaccurate claims or over exaggerated claims, or human rights issues within the carbon offset supply chain. And so when you have a lack of data transparency across your projects, that is just creating opportunity for all of those issues to emerge. And that's why I think the work that we're doing is so important, because it is basically giving the evidence and maintaining that evidence for your project, and not just because it's necessary to get your carbon credits issued, but because your investors and your buyers will want to see that this is what happened. And if there's any problems along the line, you've got an audit trail to show, what was going on and what went wrong. And that can be traced back to the individual. So yeah, it's very important for market trust as well as for decision making from the project developer point of view.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And you are talking about how important it is to have this evidence, this proof, and I'm really curious to understand, how does this work in practice? So how do you collect this data? How does the field work for you? So could you maybe share what kind of data needs to be collected, from distribution to tracking? Maybe we can pick on an example project. I know that you are supporting clean cook stoves. Maybe that's a good example project to look at. And let us know, how does it all work in the field work to collect all that data, then that is translated into the evidence, the proof that you really need.
Yeah, so cook stoves is a great example, because this is what we are working with Survey CTO on. And so basically our clients' field teams will go into the field with their devices where they're collecting data on, and use the Survey CTO forms to submit beneficiary information. This will include ID numbers, names, a lot of personal information that has to be handled securely on our end, and as well as project information that is gathered for the carbon team. And once we have got all this information, it is synced to PowerSolve. And then we have the cook stoves that get distributed. We have a couple of different processes of how this works exactly. One of them is where the cook stoves will be brought to the beneficiary's house, and then they'll do a direct swap at the house. And another one is where we'll distribute a token, and then at a later stage, there'll be a central gathering and an exchange of the token for a cook stove. And so once these cook stoves are handed out, their barcodes are scanned. And this is quite important because each carbon credit generating device has to have a unique barcode. So there can't be any duplicate serial numbers. No individual can receive a cook stove twice. And we've built in these sort of flags and restrictions with Survey CTO's help so that the incoming data into PowerSolve is well structured and we can automate as much of the cleaning and processing of that data as possible. We also collect the GPS locations and quite a few images from the field so that if there are any questions or duplicates, our teams in the office have a lot of images to refer back to so they can get a clear picture of what was going on in the field.
It was an amazing overview. Um, and I was trying to think about the data quality component that we talked about before, how important it is. And while you were mentioning the workflow, you were mentioning a lot of data quality practices that you are putting in practice. I mean, just the fact that you are digitizing your process, that's already a data quality practice in a way because you are reducing manual errors. But you were also discussing the fact that you have unique barcodes, you have a lot of things in place to prevent and to delete duplicates. And all of these are great measures. And I was just wondering if there are other things, other functionalities and practices that you are putting in place to ensure this data quality.
Yeah, I can give a few more examples. So one that we love from Survey CTO is actually the collect functionality, which allows all of our data collectors to operate with the same setup and systems. So this is quite an important step in just preventing issues later down the line. Is we do the quick setup and make sure that the same settings are set up for everyone's phones and that passwords are going to restrict anyone from changing or deleting or just messing with the configuration that we need to get the data in the right way and ensure that we don't have syncing issues. Another one is the desktop app that we also recommend our clients to use. And obviously, this is because it has the capability to simplify offline syncing. And this is an area where when you are digitizing, you do need to have quite a bit of training upfront just to make sure your field teams know, what not to do to interrupt the sync and make sure that the data gets to the server without having anything lost or any issues in between collection and the sync.
Perfect. And I think this is all very helpful for our listeners that are using, digital tools like Survey CTO, but even others, and want to put these data quality functionalities in practice. I think it's a great inspiration. So the other thing that I'm very curious about is you mentioned that you work with clients, with carbon developers, and you also mentioned that you are collecting a lot of personal identifiable data. So, what functionalities or what practices are you putting in place to ensure data integrity and transparency?
Yeah, so in terms of security and privacy, our servers are hosted on secure Microsoft Azure servers, and we do regular backups, which are monitored on a monthly basis. We maintain the servers and keep our software up to date. And in certain countries where they have different data privacy rules, sometimes we have to host our solutions locally, which is totally fine. But obviously, data privacy does change country to country. And this is not our exact speciality, but we do take care that our data is secure and is not leaving our clients' hands, and the only people who have access to it are ourselves or our clients and the verification agencies. So when the projects are initially being implemented, sensitization is quite important with the community so that they know and understand that their information is going to be processed and kept during the project, and they will sign an end user agreement. And it's also on us to ensure that we have that information stored so that our clients can access the information when they need, but also that whoever is accessing the information on the system is actually being monitored, and whatever is downloaded or uploaded or reported on within our system, and there is also an audit trail for that. So we try and make sure that, yeah, we are respectful of people's personal information, and yeah, it's only certified people who have access to it.
I think that's also very helpful to understand. Data security is quite an important value whenever we are sharing data with so many stakeholders and clients. The other thing that you mentioned before when you were walking us through the workflow, you mentioned that you were using Survey CTO to collect data, and then you were using PowerSolve. You have your own technology that you are syncing the data that you are collecting in Survey CTO. So that means that you are using multiple digital tools. And that's quite interesting because it's something that a lot of times we speak with our users about, the idea of having a tech stack. Because you have a data life cycle, you have different stages, different purposes. So a lot of times you need different tools to address the different needs of every stage. And so, just speaking on that and on the API term that you referred to earlier in our conversation, could you just share how do you integrate these tools, how you fit everything together in a way?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, the data lifecycle management is definitely where we see ourselves as fitting into the whole carbon credit life cycle. So from the ground, obviously we use Survey CTO or other um, field data collection tools, and then we use the API to get the data into PowerSolve and really automate as much of the cleaning and checking of that data as possible. So we've got a couple of flags and reports set up so that once the data comes in, each barcode will have a status, and depending on how the system sees the data, if it's clean and it's ready and it's well structured, it will process right through, and if it's not, it will then get flagged, and person will come in and see that, okay, we've got some issues over here, how can I resolve this? And once it's been resolved, then that information will also be processed. So a big thing that is going on right now in the sort of carbon credit issuance space is that the verification agencies are trying to get their process more digitized as well. So this is something that we are actively pursuing, is getting the next step of our whole big, ideally seamless system, is to integrate with those verification agencies like your Gold Standard and your Vera. And currently, we do have a lot of automated reports that get used by auditors. But the next step for us really is to get on the digital MRV pilot programs, so that your project developers don't even have to take their information out the system. We will integrate directly with the auditors so that it really is a single source of truth system. And that is where we are heading towards at the moment.
So, thank you so much for your insights, Alexa. I have a few more questions just to close up our conversation. Is there something, I guess, how do you see the future of the carbon offset industry? And maybe you can share How do you see it? And how would you like to see it? Maybe there are some differences between those two.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I would like to see is more optimistic than sometimes what I do see. Obviously, it's a big shock this year with all the political changes and some of them pulling away from carbon and climate commitments. But I do think that beyond just the carbon side of it, the co-benefits of these projects, when done well, are so wonderful. Like, the market will adjust naturally, and where good projects offer real value and real impact, I think that they have a good future ahead. I don't think it's going to be a completely smooth road. I think there was still some rocky territory ahead of us as sort of policy evolves and various regions are grappling with their own climate issues and the best way to handle them. But I don't think carbon offsets are going to go anywhere. And I would like to see a future where there is more investment in these type of projects and the scope for these projects can grow and continue to evolve so that local project developers can create projects that are addressing the needs of their local community and getting funding from whoever in the world has the money to invest in them. So, yeah, I don't think they're going anywhere, and I hope to see them grow more.
For the listeners that are working in the carbon offset industry, do you have any resources or best practices that you want to share with them?
I think best practices or just the things that have come up again and again from our side, and this I'd say is almost more from a people management perspective than a technology perspective, but people and technology have to work together. So we encourage people to invest in testing and training upfront. Don't wait until a week before you're going to implement and then think, oh, well, maybe we should think about what phones we're going to use and if we've set them up and if our local team on the ground knows how to use them. Being proactive with that sort of stuff and making sure that you communicate to partners like ourselves, just getting a quick consult in and saying, what are the technology best practices? What are the things I need to think about from someone experienced? I think that really can have value, so that when it comes to the pressurized moment where you're on the ground, your field team has been sent out, you're going to know that you don't need to expect issues because your team knows how to handle issues. Your team has done testing, your setup is done properly, and the project can just flow. So, yeah, that is my advice for project developers, whether small or big. And yeah, just to ask questions. Like, we work with a variety of different types of or different scale of projects, and we grow with our clients. So we really want to see these projects grow, and I think everyone in this industry does. So ask questions, ask for help, and consult your specialist friends.
Perfect. And honestly, I think that advice works perfectly with any industry, not just carbon offsets.
Yeah,
Especially when you refer the idea of tests and don't undermine the time that you need to spend on testing and planning. I think that's a pretty big one for everyone out there. Well,
yeah.
thank you so much, Alexa. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for this conversation. It's been great working with you guys and getting to know, yeah, your team. And we're really looking forward to more projects. Thank you.
Yeah, we too. Thank you. That wraps up today's episode with Alexa from PowerSolve Technologies. In this episode, we dove into the carbon offset industry, discussed the importance of data transparency and traceability, and learned how PowerSolve's commitment to data quality is leading the way in transforming this space. You can find the links to PowerSolve's work in our show notes, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Survey and Beyond, the data collection podcast, is brought to you by Survey CTO. To find out more about Survey CTO and how it ensures reliable, secure, and scalable data collection, visit www.surveycto.com. And make sure to search for Survey and Beyond, the Data Collection Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Survey CTO, thanks for listening.